Morren had been watching the human for 16 minutes, and in that time, she had yawned 11 times. He stood in the observation corridor, his four amber eyes fixed on the glass wall separating him from the exotic species sanctuary below. His webbed fingers gripped the railing so tightly the membrane between them had gone pale. His gill flaps fluttered with each anxious breath. And his green skin, usually a calm pale jade, had already darkened 2 shades toward nervous olive. The human private Hadley, according to the name, stitched on her uniform, sat on a small chair near the sanctuary's entrance. She was filing her nails. Filing them. With a small metal instrument that she scraped back and forth across her fingertips, while rare creatures from across the galaxy rested in their enclosures mere meters away. Morren's throat pouch inflated slightly. This was the protection the Galactic Diplomatic Corps had assigned? This barely awake mammal? She seems competent, the sanctuary director had said that morning. The humans have an excellent security record. She was asleep when I arrived yesterday, Morren had replied, resting her eyes. She was snoring. I could hear it through the glass. But the director had insisted, and so here he was, watching his lion cub, a genuine Earth lion cub, one of only 12 in this sector, batting at a hanging rope toy, while a human who appeared to be losing a battle against consciousness served as its sole protection. The cub was called Tawny. Morren had sponsored her rescue from a crashed transport vessel 3 months ago. She was small, golden-furred, with enormous amber eyes that reminded him painfully of his own species' young. Her oversized paws swatted clumsily at the rope, her tiny body wiggling with predatory concentration. Down in the sanctuary, soft ambient lighting cast everything in gentle warmth. Climate-controlled enclosures lined the walls. The large viewing windows let visitors observe without disturbing the animals. It was peaceful, idyllic even. Hadley yawned again. 12th time. She stretched her arms above her head, her spine popping audibly enough that Morren could hear it through the glass. Morren's skin darkened another shade. He had heard stories about humans, of course. Everyone had. The species that had clawed its way to sapience on a death world. The mammals who treated lethal radiation and toxic atmospheres as vacation destinations. The beings whose ancestors had hunted prey by simply following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. Morren had dismissed most of it as propaganda. The human before him certainly didn't look terrifying. She looked like she needed a nap. Her posture was atrocious. Her uniform was wrinkled. There was a food stain on her sleeve. She pulled out a communication device and began tapping at it, attention entirely absorbed. Her nail file sat abandoned on her knee. Occasionally she snorted at something on the display, shoulders shaking with amusement. Morren made a sound deep in his throat, a wet clicking that Vorath used to express displeasure. His gill flaps pressed flat against his neck. In the sanctuary below, Tawny finally caught the rope toy and tumbled backward with it clutched in her paws. She rolled onto her back, all 4 legs kicking, her small mouth open in a silent growl of triumph. Her golden fur caught the warm light. She was so small, so fragile, and that human wasn't even looking at her. Morren decided he would file a complaint, a formal one, with documentation. The ventilation grate on the sanctuary's far wall exploded outward. Metal shrieked. The grate spun through the air and embedded itself in a climate control panel. Morren's skin went from olive to forest green in the space of a heartbeat. The thing that emerged from the ductwork was massive. 8 feet of dark chitinous plates gleaming with an oily sheen. 6 small red eyes in 2 rows. An elongated armored snout lined with serrated mandibles that opened to reveal rows of jagged teeth dripping with saliva. 2 powerful arms ending in hooked claws. 2 legs built for explosive sprinting. A barbed, segmented tail that whipped behind it, gouging the wall. A Skorrax. A genuine Skorrax had somehow gotten into the station, into the ventilation system, into the sanctuary. Tawny screamed. It was not a roar. She was too young for roaring. It was a high-pitched, terrified shriek, the sound of a baby calling for help, universal across every species Morren had ever encountered. Morren's throat pouch inflated so rapidly it nearly choked him. His skin hid a shade of green so dark it was nearly black. His webbed hands scrabbled uselessly against the observation, glass too thick. Reinforced, he couldn't break through, couldn't reach her. The Skorrax's head swiveled toward the sound. Its mandibles clicked together like stones grinding. It took one thundering step toward the cowering cub, and then Hadley moved. Morren would later try to describe what he witnessed to the incident report officer. He would fail. The words existed, but they didn't capture what he had seen. Language itself seemed insufficient. One moment, the human had been sitting in her chair, absorbed in her device. The next moment, not a second later, not half a second later, but some imperceptible fraction of time that Morren's brain couldn't process, she was on her feet and moving. She didn't run. Running implied acceleration. Hadley simply was slow and then was fast. Her device clattered to the floor, screen cracking. Her chair toppled backward. Her nail file remained suspended in the air where her knee had been, not yet having received the message from gravity that its support had vanished. The Skorrax was 3 meters from Tawny, the little lion cub pressed flat against the floor, ears pinned back, frozen in terror. Hadley covered the distance from her chair to the predator in the time it took Morren to blink. She didn't draw a weapon. There wasn't time. Instead, her 2 arms, those fragile-looking human arms that Morren had assumed were vestigial combat appendages, at best shot forward with terrifying precision. One hand grabbed a mandible. The other grabbed the opposite mandible. And she pulled. The sound that followed was wet, crunchy, final. Morren watched, his 4 eyes unable to look away, as the human tore the Skorrax's jaw apart with her bare hands. Chitin cracked like breaking pottery. Something vital ruptured with a spray of dark fluid. The predator made a confused gurgle, as if it couldn't process what was happening to it. Hadley wasn't finished. The Skorrax's tail whipped toward her with killing force. She ducked, not gracefully, but with brutal efficiency. The barbed tip whistled over her head. She grabbed the tail as it passed, yanked it downward with her full body weight, and slammed the predator face first into the floor. The floor cracked. Something else cracked too. Several somethings. The Skorrax tried to rise. Hadley put her boot on its head and pushed down. She grabbed one of its arms with both hands, planted her feet, and twisted. More cracking sounds. A wet pop. The arm came loose. Morren's gill flaps had stopped fluttering. They hung limp. His skin had passed through fear black and emerged somewhere on the other side, a color he wasn't sure had a name. The entire thing had taken 4 seconds, maybe 5. The Skorrax stopped moving. The sanctuary went silent. The only sound was Tawny's rapid, frightened panting. Hadley straightened up. She rolled her shoulders, cracked her neck. She looked down at the very dead apex predator at her feet with an expression of mild annoyance, the way someone might look at a spilled drink. She said. Got gunk on my boots. Then she turned toward Tawny. The cub was still frozen, still trembling. Her amber eyes were huge, locked on the human approaching her. Hadley walked over slowly, carefully stepping over the Skorrax's remains and crouched down. Her blood-spattered hands reached out, and Morren nearly cracked the observation glass trying to shout a warning, but she simply scratched the cub gently behind the ears. Hey there, little one, she said softly. Big scary thing is gone now. See? All gone. She gestured at the corpse as if it were a spider she'd squashed, rather than an 8-foot armored killing machine she dismantled with her bare hands. Tawny's ears slowly unpinned. Then, very carefully, she crept forward and butted her small head against Hadley's knee. There we go. Hadley smiled. It was a nice smile. Warm, the kind of smile that made you forget you'd watched its owner commit an act of violence so efficient it bordered on art. Good girl. Brave girl. She scooped the cub up with one arm. Tawny immediately began purring, a rumbling sound far too loud for such a small creature. Her oversized paws kneaded at Hadley's uniform, leaving dirty prints. Hadley pulled out her cracked communication device. Yeah, hi. This is Private Hadley in the Exotic Species Sanctuary. Skorrax breached through ventilation shaft C4. Need cleanup and a replacement grate. The lion cub's enclosure barrier is cracked, gonna need maintenance. A pause. Yeah, I handled it. No injuries. Can you send wet wipes too? Thanks. She looked down at Tawny, who was chewing on a loose thread from her sleeve. You're a menace, Hadley told her affectionately. A cute menace, but still. Morren finally remembered how to move. He sprinted for the stairs, webbed feet slapping against the metal steps. By the time he burst through the sanctuary doors, Hadley had settled cross-legged on the floor. Tawny was in her lap, belly up, all four paws in the air while Hadley rubbed her stomach. The cub's eyes were half closed in bliss, her purring echoing off the walls. The Skorrax corpse was still there, leaking fluids in an expanding puddle. Oh, hey. Hadley looked up, not pausing in her belly rubbing. You're the Vorath who sponsors this little fuzzball, right? She's great. Totally handled the whole almost getting eaten thing like a champ. Morren's mouth opened. Closed. His skin was cycling through colors like a malfunctioning display. You, he managed. That, the first health. He gestured helplessly at the corpse. Oh, that, Hadley shrugged. Yeah, those things are nasty. Good thing it came through when I was here. Anyway, you'll need to fill out an incident report. Just a formality. A few minutes, Morren repeated faintly. Yeah, bureaucracy, right? The form's like 9 pages. Oh, she likes it when you scratch right here. Hadley demonstrated a spot behind Tawny's ear. The cub's back leg started kicking. Gets her every time. Morren stood there, gill flaps twitching, watching his lion cub receive belly rubs from the most terrifying creature he had ever encountered. The sanctuary director arrived. A tall Kralian with smooth green skin pushed through the doors, saw the Skorrax corpse, saw the human playing with the lion cub, and made a sound Morren had never heard a Kralian make. His skin went from healthy jade to sickly pale. What? The director said, his voice cracking. Happened. Morren looked at him. He looked at Hadley. He looked at Tawny, who had grabbed Hadley's hand and was gnawing on her fingers with tiny, needle-sharp teeth. Hadley seemed unconcerned. There was a Skorrax, Morren said distantly. The human killed it. Now the cub is getting belly rubs. She killed a Skorrax. With her hands. With her bare hands. Both of them. It took 4 seconds. I counted. The director looked at Hadley. Hadley waved with the hand not being chewed on. Hi. The cub's doing great. Barely even traumatized. The cleanup crew arrived. Tyrellians, large and four-armed. They took one look at the Skorrax, one look at Hadley, and began their work in complete silence, giving the human a very wide berth. Morren filled out his incident report at a small desk. His hands shook so badly his handwriting was nearly illegible. Under "Describe what you witnessed," he wrote, the human removed the threat. He could not bring himself to write more. When he approached to check on Tawny, the cub had fallen asleep in Hadley's arms. Her small paws twitched occasionally, dreaming of rope toys rather than monsters. She's a sweetheart, Hadley said quietly. You picked a good one to sponsor. Morren looked at the sleeping cub. He looked at the woman holding her, the woman who had torn an apex predator apart and was now cradling a baby lion like it was made of spun glass. She seems to like you, he managed. Animals usually do. Hadley smiled. Don't know why. I'm really more of a dog person. Hadley carefully transferred the sleeping Tawny into Morren's arms. The cub barely stirred, just snuggled deeper into his chest. Hadley returned to her chair. She picked up her nail file and resumed filing. She yawned. Morren held the sleeping cub a little tighter and decided he would visit again tomorrow. He never filed that complaint.